Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Monday, the 6th day of October, 2025. And here's the latest on the hostage situation as the parties begin talking to one another. And let me say at the outset, it doesn't look good. All right, headline number one from the Times of Israel. Official warns against expecting quick agreement in Gaza talks. And then we have this from Donald Trump by way of Jerusalem Post. Time is of the essence, or massive bloodshed will follow. Trump warns Gaza ceasefire delegations. And then from N12 JFEED, the Israeli site, Israel's ultimate demand will Trump force Qatar and Turkey to expel the Hamas leaders. In other words, they're living there in luxury. Well, he forced them to do that. And then also from the same article in JFEED, I've made it a separate headline. Hamas's counter demands and military pause, which if they hold to that, there's no way a deal could possibly be followed through with. Then finally, another story dealing with something that's going to happen tomorrow, which is sickening. From the Times of Israel, anti-Israel activists to flood New York City on October 2nd. It's the 2-year anniversary of the murderous attack from Hamas. Are going to flood New York City and just talk about Israel's genocide and totally ignore what the murderous Hamas are doing. So let's look at these headlines because they're very important, but they're not real encouraging. Like we've been saying, it's everybody's been excited, and we try to calm that down a bit. It would be nice, wouldn't it? But there's the but here. Yeah, like again, Hamas said yes, but, and we're seeing this right now. Okay, headline number one: official warns against expecting quick agreement in Gaza talks. An unnamed official briefed on Gaza talks taking place in Egypt says negotiations kicking off today will likely not be quick, despite Israeli and U.S. demands that the process be wrapped up within days. Negotiations will last at least a few days, if not longer. There won't likely be a quick agreement because the goal is to reach agreement on a comprehensive deal with all details worked out before the ceasefire can begin to be implemented, says the official, whose origin is not detailed. Hamas and Israel have agreed to the fundamentals of the Trump 20-point plan. Actually, they haven't. The next phase or phases of talks are designed to tackle the specific details, which in the past have been a lengthy process, the official adds. A previous ceasefire saw mediators secure an agreement on a first phase while leaving the rest to be negotiated later, only for the whole process to collapse within short order. We've talked about that in the past. The official says mediators have a long list of difficult issues to get Israel and Hamas to agree upon, ranging from logistics like the details and timeline for a withdrawal of Israeli forces inside Gaza to the fine print of a transfer of Gaza governments away from Hamas and the formation of an international stabilization force envisioned as part of the Trump plan. A Hamas source tells Reuters that the disarmament of the group is another thorny issue, insisting it will only lay down its arms when Israel ends its occupation and a Palestinian state is created. That will never happen. So this was the worry from the beginning. There will be no quick result here. How much time Trump and Israel will give them before the fighting continues is remains to be seen. But there's just nothing going to happen right away. This was what we were worried about. Lindsey Graham was right with the yes, but Trump wants to see something happen right away. He's excited about it. He's telling everybody it's going to happen. But like Netanyahu told him, look, I know these fellas, and this you can't trust him. It's not going to happen right away. So sad to say, this is where we're at. All right, now, which brings us to headline number two. Time is of the essence, or massive bloodshed will follow. This is from Donald Trump. He warns Gaza ceasefire delegations by way of the Jerusalem Post. This is from last night. U.S. President Donald Trump warned that time is of the essence in Gaza ceasefire talks, urging negotiators to act quickly to avoid massive bloodshed and saying progress so far has been very positive. Well, that's not really true, but anyway, we'll leave that for later. Those negotiating a ceasefire in Gaza should move fast. That's all uppercase letters. U.S. President Donald Trump insisted in a post on Truth Social on Sunday evening. Time is of the essence, or massive bloodshed will follow, the president warned, adding that this is something that nobody wants to see. And that's true. Nobody wants to see this. Trump affirmed there have been very positive discussions with Hamas and countries from all over the world during the ceasefire negotiations. These talks are aiming to release the hostages in the war in Gaza, but more importantly, finally have a long sought peace in the Middle East, Trump stated. The president commented that the talks have been very successful and are proceeding rapidly. Well, we know there won't be peace in the Middle East until the Lord Jesus Christ returns. In our book, 25 Signs, we're near the end, sign number 7. Israel being a continual search for peace. In fact, the greatest wars and the greatest threats against them, the Great Tribulation, what is called the last 3.5 years, the final 7-year period, is still future. As we document in our book, Look Up, a Timeline of 50 Last Days Events, and also in our book, 25 Signs We're Near the End. Now, they're both free downloads from our website, Educating Our World, so we want you to take advantage of them. But the point is, there's not going to be any peace here at all. And we wish there could be. We really do. But facts are facts. And the Bible tells us exactly what to expect. Now, the next two stories are from the same article. I've divided it from JFEED. That's from the Israeli channel 12, channel N12. It's called JFEED. And here's the headline: Israel's ultimate demand, will Trump force Qatar and Turkey to expel Hamas leaders? That's a great question. As high stakes negotiations begin, senior Israeli officials believe the only guarantee for a successful deal, and I like this, is a commitment from the U.S. to pressure Qatar and Turkey to expel Hamas leadership if the terror group breaches the agreement or doesn't come to one. Negotiations between Israel and the Hamas terror group, mediated by Qatar and Egypt, are set to officially commence today. Well, it was tomorrow, but it's today. Despite the tight deadline set by President Trump, many complex issues remain. Senior Israeli officials speaking to the press have clarified the expected timeline. This will be a short and focused negotiation. In a few days, we will know if there's a deal or not. Now, that's probably true. Can they work out a deal? They'll know in a few days, and the answer will most likely be no. Now, the deportation leverage. The officials disclosed a critical American bargaining chip that Israel hopes to secure leverage over Hamas's external leadership. Did Trump reach an agreement with Turkey and Qatar that in the event Hamas does not comply with the terms of the agreement, they will expel them, the officials questioned, asserting this is the only leverage that can ensure the implementation of the deal. Now, the issue of expelling Hamas personnel was raised during the conversation between Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. However, remains unclear whether Israel has received a definite answer confirming that Trump has secured such a commitment from the mediating nations. Now, next heading, the negotiation teams and timeline. Herein where the problem lies. The Israeli delegation departing for the talks in Egypt include, and they give the head of the Shin Bet, retired general, blah, blah, blah. But here's what's happening, and what's really interesting, notably absent from the initial talks are Israeli Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer and senior U.S. officials, including Presidential Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. The absence signals that the first meetings will focus on technical details, with the senior figures only joining later if a breakthrough is imminent. So first of all, you've got the deputy head of the Shin Bet, retired general, and a prime minister's political advisor. They're going to be talking now. That's today in Sharm el Sheikh in Egypt to try and get this show on the road. And as the article says, the initial mission in Sharm el Sheikh is to finalize technical details, including timelines, operational maps, list of the security prisoners to be released, and monitoring mechanisms. If a genuine possibility, now here's the big if a genuine possibility of closing a deal emerges, then the senior Israeli and U.S. officials are expected to join the talks later in the week to approve the final agreement. Under the most optimistic scenario, officials estimate that the first hostages will not reach Israel before next Sunday or Monday, as a 72-hour window is required between the signing of an agreement and the first release. All right, now the article continues, but we've made this a separate headline. Again, this is from N12 JFEED. Hamas's counter demands and military pause, and herein lies the worry. In parallel, Arabic media reports continue to detail Hamas's expected counter demands. Hamas source tell Al Arabiya the group has begun collecting the bodies of dead Israeli hostages and requested a halt to bombings to complete the task. The source claimed to have received American guarantees through Qatar regarding both a permanent Israeli withdrawal and the non-targeting of Hamas leaders. The group's demands, according to the Saudi channel Ashhark, I guess you pronounce it, will include a complete ceasefire throughout the negotiations, a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza City, that's not going to happen, and a suspension of aerial sorties for 10 to 12 hours daily. The source added that Hamas has submitted a list of both living and deceased captives to the mediators. Meanwhile, Israeli forces have significantly reduced military activity in Gaza in coordination with the White House and at the instruction of the political echelon, a move intended to avoid jeopardizing the potential agreement. Military officials stress this is a methodological pause only. It's only a method pause they're doing, with forces maintaining high readiness to respond instantly to any threat. In other words, they're just moving back they're just doing this for now, but they can come back and start the process again if they have to. The chief of staff convened a special situation assessment, instructing forces to prepare for the implementation of the first phase of the Trump plan while prioritizing the safety of the troops. In other words, all right, we're going to go with the idea that this is going to work out. We're going to assume this is going to happen. So we're moving back. We're not going to fire. We're not going to go and destroy any more of Hamas's infrastructure there in Gaza City, because we hope and pray the hostages will be released, because there will be an agreement between these negotiators, between Hamas and Israel, with Qatar and Egypt being the mediators, as it will. But as we see, this is just, we cannot see this happening because of the demands Hamas is making. And Israel will have none of it. Trump will have none of it. And so what we're going to probably see very soon is the fighting continue. I hate to say this, but I can't see any other way out, because Hamas is seemingly very, set on doing this. Again, we will wait and see. Stranger things have happened, but this is where we're at right now. Now, our last story, as this weren't bad enough, tomorrow is, by the way, the second anniversary of the murderous attack by Hamas, October 7th, 2023, that killed something like 1,200 Israelis, murdered them, men, women, children, babies, just wanton slaughter, rape, murder, and taken 250 hostages. So what's going to happen in New York City? From the Times of Israel tells us anti-Israel activists to flood New York City tomorrow. Protesters hold citywide rally to resist for Palestine on anniversary of the Hamas massacre. Anti-Israel activists in New York City have announced mass rallies scheduled tomorrow, Tuesday, the second anniversary of the October 7th, 2023 terror invasion of Israel. Within our lifetime, the leading anti-Israel activist group on the city streets announced a plan to, quote, flood New York City for Gaza. The activists often dubbed the rallies floods, echoing the Hamas name for the October 2023 attack, the Al-Aqsa flood. They suppose they did it because the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is their name for the Temple Mount, whereas we've talked about before, a third temple will eventually be built, which will be center stage for last days Bible prophecy, the events that will take place there. We deal with this in our book, The Jews, Jerusalem, the Coming Temple, also a free download from our website, Educating Our World. But they call it the Al-Aqsa flood because they said, well, the reason we did this initially because they were going to take over the Temple Mount, destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock and build their temple, all this nonsense. That was not what was in the cards immediately. Anyway, they go on to say, honor our martyrs, break the siege, end the genocide, resist for Palestine. Within our lifetime announced in its plan for a citywide rally centered Midtown Manhattan tomorrow afternoon. Activist groups across the City University of New York, CUNY public system, include campus chapters for Students for Justice in Palestine, have announced student walkouts to protest for Gaza on Tuesday. The student group plans to join Within Our Lifetime rally after leaving the class. Announcements for the student walkout were marked with inverted red triangles, a symbol Hamas uses to mark its targets on its promotional videos. Now get this, over 600,000 dead. This is such a lie. This is not even close to the figures, announcing more than 500,000 deaths to Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministries reported toll. This, I guess, in the last 2 years. And they count anybody that dies. They die of old age. They die of, whatever. Anyway, within our lifetime, the National Students for Justice in Palestine now get this, they backed the Hamas attack the day after it happened. So they're for murdering, killing, and raping and pillaging. That's who these people are. Anti-Israel rallies marking the Hamas attack were announced in several other U.S. cities, including San Francisco, Tampa, and Boston, as well as Toronto, Canada. Jewish groups in New York City are also holding several events to commemorate the attack, some of which are being kept under wraps ahead of time for security reasons. Chabad of the Upper East Side will hold a celebratory event because October 7th falls on the first day of the Sukkot. That's Fat Tabernacles, by the way, Feast of Booths or temporary shelters, first day of the Sukkot holiday, saying the group plans for dancing for those who can no longer dance, celebrating the holiday and traditions for those who can no longer celebrate. At Columbia University, the pro-Israel group Diplo Act, Let's Do Something, and Students for Supporting Israel will set up 1,200 empty chairs across the campus on Monday, one for each of the Hamas attack victims with photos of the dead on each seat. And that's something. So they'll have 1,200 seats and have a photo of each of the 1,200 people that were killed that day. All right, the fact they're going to do this, that is not the Israelis, but Hamas and the Hamas supporters, is sickening. Yet this is the world that you and I live in. We know from Scripture the hatred from Israel for Israel will only get worse. Sign 21 of our 25 signs. We're near the end. We document this. There'll be a rise in anti-Semitism to the place where the entire world will be against Israel. The book is a free download from our website, Educating Our World, under the heading of Bible Prophecy. All right, so now we'll wait and see what happens next. We'll come to you later today with any updates, but again, it doesn't look very promising. With Hamas, we'll probably make demand after demand that will sink, torpedo any type of agreement. All right, I'm Don Stewart. Thank you for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.